But first, I want to talk about the latest revelations from the Hancock WhatsApp files on page 2 of today's paper, where Britain's top civil servant, recruited by Boris Johnson, working and partying alongside him during the pandemic, Simon Case, is caught out saying he is a nationally distrusted figure and shouldn't be the one sent out to persuade people of the seriousness of COVID. Now, Darren, this isn't really telling us what we don't already know, but it's amazing that this guy was firstly prepared to work for Boris in this case, but secondly, kept sending him out to persuade people of the seriousness of COVID. Just let that happen without saying someone else should be doing it.
Do you know, Sarah, it'd be laughable if it wasn't so serious and if so many of us weren't adversely affected by what had happened at that time, if so many of us hadn't had friends, loved ones who had to spend time alone, in many cases die alone, not be able to attend funerals. And then you've got this web of lies and misleading statements and conflicting interests from people who just find it so difficult to be honest with us. And listen, all this stuff about Boris not being trusted, if we deal with that separately, we know, what do we know? Well, Boris, he broke the rules. He announced the rules. Then he broke the rules. Then he denied that he'd broken the rules. And yet he and they were all trying to get us to live our lives in a specific way. And I always think about that ad campaign they had at the time. Look into their eyes and tell them that you're adhering to the rules. And yet all the time they were partying, all the time they were surrounded by bottles of wine and having these work events. And you know, we can split hairs of what they were, what they were not, but anyone with a pair of ears and eyes can see and knew what was going on. So when Simon Case comes out and starts to tell us about Boris not being trusted, I think he should have a long look, pardon the pun, in the mirror.
Well, yes, lots of people could do with seeing more in the mirror, but that's why we're on YouTube, so people don't see us. Couldn't find out what we're talking about anyway. Now, I can remember that it was said at the time that the COVID messaging couldn't be down to the shysters in government. Chris Whitty, I think that the SAGE, the technical group of experts, were giving reports when they were published. It showed they were saying you can't let politicians do the messaging on this because people don't listen to them enough. But you know, people in government, being scumbags without self-awareness that they went ahead and did it anyway because they wanted to claim the credit for various things, and that had a knock-on effect that meant people in communities which were not represented in government just didn't have the same vaccine uptake as people who perhaps were more represented in government, i.e. minority communities, people who just automatically distrust anyone from Eton, as opposed to people who think people from Eton must be, you know, they must be very clever and I'm going to do what they say. So that had a real world impact, didn't it, Darren? It wasn't just a case of someone being a bit too posh to be believable or a bit naughty. The fact was he was so widely distrusted by so many millions of people, and he was allowed to run the whole thing. That would have killed people. It would have killed a lot of people in minority communities.
Well, absolutely. I mean, listen, I don't want to say anything that's going to offend anyone, so I won't refer specifically to the language that Boris Johnson is on record as having used relating to people who look like me. I won't refer to the references to people from certain community that he used, that he was invited to apologize for, and he rejected those opportunities to row back on that kind of language, to condemn it. You know, even before the European Championships, when he was asked, the football, when he was asked to maybe condemn the people who were booing the taking of the knee, and he didn't want to get involved in all of that. And so this is a man who created a culture around him that left many people to feel that he was not representing them. And so if he were to go out, and even, you know, it's just come to mind, Susie, when that priority list for the vaccine was actually released, I remember at the time asking, if there are so many black and brown people who are dying around the country, particularly in the NHS, why are they not on the priority list? And that was a big part. And I remember playing a part, writing for the Mirror, speaking and asking, you know, saying to people, look, take the vaccine, your health depends on it. It isn't just for other demographics, it's for us too to be able to protect ourselves. Whatever you do or don't think of the vaccine, it is important to make sure that your health is prioritized. And yet, the government were basically saying to all of these people, you don't matter, a government over which Boris Johnson presided. And Boris Johnson, with his language, with his rhetoric, with his hostile environment, and all the other things that he was doing to basically say to people, black, brown people, you're not important, suddenly was trying to push this message that, yes, we do care about you. We do want you to take the vaccine. When everybody looked at him and said, no, thank you, I'm all right. And that, as you rightly say, will in many cases have cost lives.
And what do you think, everybody? Do you think this is a bit unfair on Boris Johnson? The fact that he had a reputation for being a bit loose with some of his words, does that mean that you distrusted him on the vaccine? Did it mean that when it came to the vaccine, it was something you just put aside because you knew he was being briefed by the scientists and you had faith in them, perhaps? I don't know. Get into the comments and let us know.